Welcome, friends, to the Soul Talk podcast, a show where we explore and uncover the path to the heart, amplifying your conscience. Join me as we meet incredible souls who are in this journey and learn from their experience and different methods that will make you vibrate your heart. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. This is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love, and thank you for being in Soul Talk. We really appreciate your presence. And today we have a special invite. Her name is Kristen Yates. And let me tell you a little bit about her before we go dive in. She's a breathwork facilitator, somatic-based coach. She's a psychedelic integration guide and shamanic practitioner. Christine, thank you so much for being in Soul Talk. I really appreciate you being here in Soul Talk. And
Thank you. Yeah,
tell
it's
us a little
such
bit
an
about
honor to be here.
tell us a little bit more about yourself. Yes, you have a very interesting
Yeah,
titles, but tell us how do you got there and how do you got there and
definitely.
to get there and actually you start creating all this content
Yeah,
now.
it's a great question. So, yeah, I love that the name of the show is Soul Talk. It feels like the theme that's really woven through my life is really this pursuit of the truth of the soul, the true nature of the soul. And my life has been somewhat interesting. I'm from the United States and I'm actually here now in Oregon. But when I was 23 years old, I left my actually my second corporate job. I worked at a law firm. I had graduated university, studied psychology. I was planning to go to graduate school and really focus on this straight and narrow path. It was always very ingrained in me from a young child that I needed to live a life that was successful and productive and purposeful. And I'll kind of circle back to this when we talk more about the shadow work, because this can be a shadow in many ways as well. But yeah, so I had really planned to go on to graduate school and become a consultant or a psychologist in some capacity there. But about a year into my first corporate job, I felt this pull, and it was telling me to take a completely different path. I had traveled a bit, I had studied abroad in school, and to keep a very long story rather short, I was offered a promotion at my job, and rather than take that, I decided to leave and to go teach English abroad in the Czech Republic for a couple of years. So the thing here, it really felt like a turning point in life. I felt like, okay, I'll probably do this for a few years and then come back and get serious about my life and really, find that proper respectable career path that I'll be able to explain very coherently to my parents, when I go home. And that's not actually how it turned out for me. Those 2 years living abroad in the Czech Republic and traveling through Europe and really immersing myself in a new culture, that just led me to really develop a lifestyle where I was traveling and working to support that lifestyle and beginning to study many different healing modalities and self-development modalities. So I actually moved to Thailand after the Czech Republic, and that was in 2012. And I feel like that's kind of where that was the tipping point. Like once I had passed over to move to Thailand, it was like, okay, it's going to be really hard to go back. And so, yeah, just to give that, I can't believe it's been 12 years since then. But the short story is, I've over these years, I actually worked in quite a few different capacities before I really landed and settled more into coaching, therapy work, wellness work around 2017, 2018. I was freelancing, I was doing marketing support, I was working for coaches primarily. I was supporting with retreat production in Bali for a life coach and a life coaching company there. So it was a great experience, getting to like I transitioned from English teaching to working online, doing this virtual support for coaches. And, that was my first exposure to the coaching industry. And I feel that that was the coaching industry, the life coaching and the personal development industry, the way that we see it now, it was really starting back then around 12 years ago. I think it had been probably happening for a little bit already, but we didn't see it, exploding in the same way that we do now, especially with social media. And, this really opened my eyes because it showed me that there was a career path that, wove together psychology and this quest for true meaning for true soul fulfillment and soul awakening. That isn't necessarily sitting in a psychologist's office or adhering to standards of licensure and bureaucracy, right? My boss at the time was a life coach running these international retreats and teaching his material and, changing people's lives. And I was there, I think at the time I was teaching yoga. So we were offering yoga and movement and sound and really this big expressive activities. And that was what really showed me this was the path that I wanted to take. Yeah, so from there, over those years, I was studying yoga. I was traveling to India to study yoga and meditation, living in Thailand, kind of back and forth between Thailand and Bali, and really developing myself and really, exploring. Like there were many years for me of exploring, and there were many years of shadow and really going into the dark night of the soul, which is why I'm so passionate about shadow work now. And, to kind of try to condense this a bit, in 2020 we all went through our own little bit of shadow, diving into the shadow, right? Like really being in that stillness, everything coming up, the world shutting down, being with the uncertainty, everything that we think we knew to be true, not true, right? Businesses can shut down. We can, our jobs are not as secure as we thought they might be. Being in person with people isn't as secure as we thought it might be, and for me during that year, it's the first time that I stayed in one place for 8 months. I actually returned to the US after hosting a retreat in Bali, one of my own retreats. This is kind of when I was just starting to really facilitate more on my own. I was coaching, but that was the first retreat that we had done internationally, myself and one of my partners. And then the world shut down. I came back to the US in 2020. And really, it was a period of integration. Yeah, it was a beautiful time. Obviously, a lot of things came up, but after that time is when I felt the call to return to Peru. And Peru had pulled me there in 2019. Yeah. It
I've been
seems
there.
you have a connection with Peru.
God, I went there about 2 years ago, and it was like I don't want to come back.
Oh, Peru. Yeah, as you know, and I'm so curious to hear more about your journey there as well. It's like, yeah, it changes your life just spending time in the land there. And I had been living in the north of Thailand primarily as a digital nomad in Chiang Mai for quite a few years, on and off for 7 years. I first felt that call to Peru in 2019, and it was so strong that I couldn't ignore it. I didn't know what it was. I was dreaming about these mountains. I had Machu Picchu on my vision board, but I felt like, why am I going to Peru? My logical mind didn't have a reason to go. I felt like it was, which is kind of crazy to say because I was a nomad and a traveler and I did make spontaneous decisions, but I was living a little bit in scarcity. I was like, well, am I going to work? Like, how am I going to build my business? Or how is this going to serve my current life? And ultimately the calling was so strong that I had to go, that I eventually I went, and it was just this, yeah, I kind of upended my current plans, went to Peru in 2019. And that was, yeah, the beginning of the new chapter. So in 2020, I returned back there and stayed for 6 months, and really began, both developing my relationship with Peru, but just going through a process of like alchemization in myself and my soul. And it really felt like these years have been shedding a past identity that I held of, yes, I was a facilitator and a coach and all of that, and a digital nomad and entrepreneur living in Thailand, but living in Peru, working with some of the teachers that I've worked with, some of the plants that I've worked with, just spending time in this land, learning from this culture and this way of being, it's changed me at a soul level, right? And so it's completely changed the work that I do and the way that I am and how I show up in the world. And so, yeah, many shadow processes happened in there as well, but I've really stepped much more into, yeah, a world of like blending coaching with therapy, real deep healing work, learning from so many incredible humans, plants, mountain spirits, and
I wanted to ask
yeah,
about
and just
this.
exploring, becoming a bridge between these sacred lands, the sacred land of Peru to here, also Bali, I have very strong connection there, also India. So I see my role now, both as individual and group facilitator, but also a bridge for other people to experience the potency of these lands and the transformation that can happen when we get out of our comfort zone and go immerse in a new environment. Yeah.
I wrote down several questions that I wanted to ask you. The first is, I understand that many people go to college because they want to do a degree and they want to have a career and they're following the program that the parents put them on them, that you have to have a college degree and follow that. That
Yeah.
basically, that's how I see it, is the old world.
Yeah.
Before you got a college degree, you're going to become successful, have a great job, and you have your dream life and so forth. But that's what's worked for our parents.
Right.
In this generation, that not necessarily is going to give you your dream life.
Hmm.
And we see it over and over and over with all the generations that are coming. But there is still the stigmas. If you're a
Hmm.
graduated psychologist and you ended as a coach, and I see over and over so many of the coaches now, they are graduated psychologists
Mm.
and they let it go. So
Yeah.
they don't have to conform to all the laws, and it's in there because those are the tricks of
Yeah.
having that degree. You are more limited what you can do for your clients that becoming a coach.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
but that transition must be very, very hard emotionally in all your beliefs
Right.
and the dreams of your family and everything.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that transition and that choice making? Because many of our viewers probably are passing through that right now.
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think, yeah, it's something that's really, I feel like it's been with me for so many of these years that I've been traveling and kind of evolving my career path. There's always been that question in my mind of should I go back to graduate school and earn my master's degree in psychology? For me, it always felt pretty clear that I didn't want to be a therapist. The path of traditional clinical psychotherapy never appealed to me. Even when I was an undergraduate, I was taking courses. I had my bachelor's degree in psychology, but I was going more the route of cognitive psych, social psych. I was in research, so I was doing more like cognitive psychology research, more so than studying like family therapy and psychopathology and things like that. So I knew that I didn't see myself as a therapist, but still that stigma of without a master's degree, you're not actually a psychologist, right? You're not actually going to be credible in these certain ways, or that you can't, take insurance to work in these certain ways. As you mentioned, I also see this. And I've spoken to so many therapists who have gone out and, actually, yeah, either shifted into coaching or opened up a separate practice that's coaching because it does give them a lot more liberty to work with different people or to bring in different modalities. I think that in terms of speaking to just advice, and if people are kind of in this inquiry themselves, I think it's so important to remember that the times we're in, like you said, it's changed so much. We're not in the world we were in 30 years ago, where there was this one kind of standardized academic path. We all know this. There's people out there with master's degrees who don't find jobs. And I do think um, I truly believe that developing entrepreneurial skills is not only like a bonus on top of the like a cherry on the cake right now, it's necessary for us to thrive in our lives right now. We are seeing that so much of what we've taken for granted or taken as given is no longer as stable as we once thought it was, right? We can't assume that we're going to go get a job or we're going to get a degree and then automatically find a job that gives us this salary. Like all bets are off these days. There's the people who are truly successful and the most creatively fulfilled, building careers that synthesize different interests and bodies of work and skills. You know, that really does require carving out your own path. Um,
And
mhm,
something that I notice, I come from Mexico, and
mhm,
something that I noticed between the psychologists in Mexico and the psychologists in the United States are very, very different, and it has to do with
mm,
insurance. The
mm,
insurance is the one that damaged that. I do know people that have been going to psychologists in the United States for 15 years, and they still in the same point because they
mm,
cannot advance. They don't want to go directly to the pain point
yeah,
or doing
yeah,
the shadow work, the getting dirty their hands. And in Mexico, they do because no one, they're getting paid
Yeah.
like coaches in a way. They, yeah, some insurance will pay it, but it is not as easy to get an insurance for mental health in Mexico as United States.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
have to get the clients faster getting out and going really to those points
Ah,
faster than a
okay.
psychologist in United States. So that's something that I noticed, that what it harmed actually the medical industry. We're talking about psychologists. It is the is the insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you
Mm-hmm.
would say, oh, well, they will pay for that. Yes, but you're gonna go there for 20 years and you're gonna be exactly where you are.
Yeah. Right. Because what is the therapist's motivation to help you heal and actually not need them anymore?
Yes.
Right?
Rest your paycheck. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's the capitalistic nature of wellness in our country. It's inherently a bit toxic, right? Keeping people in that same loop. And it's so true. It's like we need to be so mindful when we're going to therapy or when we're using these tools that we are making progress, that we're integrating what we learn, that we're using the shifts to actually create change in our lives, because it can be so easy to enter into this cycle of just constant self-reflection and kind of looping around the same issues and analyzing over and over again without making embodied change,
But why,
right? So that,
my
yeah.
question I have is why they're so afraid to go to the pain point faster,
Mm,
directly where the trauma was caused. They
mm-hmm,
take years to get there instead of with a coach or a facilitator
mm-hmm.
like you or me. They,
Yeah.
they go directly where it hurts, wherever the trauma was caused.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why it takes forever?
Yeah.
I understand the money wise,
Right.
wise, but they're afraid at the same time to do.
We're talking about the therapists who are working with people.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's such a good question. Coming from my perspective, I think that it's so vital to have an integrative toolkit to support people with this work. There's only so far I feel that we can go with talk therapy, right? We need to be able to help people get into their bodies, and this is really potentially why it takes so long to get there with talk therapy, is because the trauma often didn't come in at the verbal level. The trauma didn't often come in at the conscious level, right? And this is where we kind of get into the shadow work piece, because our consciousness is actually primarily happening at the subconscious level. Like if we think about our entire consciousness as this iceberg, like we've probably all seen this diagram before, the ego, the conscious identity, is the part sticking up above the water, and then everything underneath the surface, the vast majority of the mass of the conscious iceberg is submerged, right? And so when we're young, when we're taking in these traumas, when we're forming the shadows, the parts of ourselves that we exile, that we push down, that we decided that we don't accept, that so often happened emotionally or somatically or energetically rather than at a rational level. So there's
yeah,
only so far you're going to be able to go by rationally talking about and remembering and going into these memories from a verbal level. We have to go in at a subconscious level or somatic level, or using tools, yeah, just different somatic tools, hypnosis or breath work, or somatic experiencing, or other even parts work in IFS, which is still talking, but really helps people connect to these um, different parts inside that are protecting the wounded child. And so, yeah, just from my perspective, it's yeah, it doesn't always get there through talking. It can genuinely take years.
it can, but the thing is, how I see it, because even in Mexico, there is a talking therapy, but they
Hmm.
go directly to the pain point.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
here in the United States, at least the people have known, it is they're too afraid to go there fast.
Mm. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
why?
It's That's a good question. It's interesting. I mean, it makes me wonder, is it just a different approach, Is it also like, obviously you want to build that trust and rapport with your client and to work in a trauma-informed way before just going right into that pain point, but perhaps, is it actually empowering the client more to trust that they're ready to go there? And are we kind of coddling clients or patients, in the more psychological terminology they use, patients, I suppose, you know, kind of going too slowly and not really trusting that they're ready to move through that. So I think it's a balance, right? This is where the nuance of being a practitioner comes in to really feel like what your client is ready for.
I would like to jump a little bit about shadow work because
Sure, yeah.
just the name, many people, I do shadow work too with my clients.
Mm.
And when you just mentioned shadow work, it's like, oh, they get scared. So let's dive in on what it is, first of all, shadow work. And every single practitioner that do shadow work, we do work in different ways and different modalities and so forth. But let's
Yeah.
start with what it is, shadow work.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, shadow work, is coined by Carl Jung, right? So whenever whoever's working with shadow work is working with a Jungian perspective, hopefully that they're aware of that and they've studied a bit of Jung's work. But he's the grandfather of the shadow work and the working with these different levels of consciousness. And so, the shadow at its essence is the part of ourselves or the parts of ourselves that we've pushed away, that we've actually repressed, because we felt at some point in our lives that they were not acceptable, that they were not worthy, that they were dangerous, perhaps even for us, at some point of our lives. And so it just becomes repressed and it becomes part of this, like, yeah, just this unconscious aspect of ourselves that, without our consciously knowing it, still arises in different ways in our lives, right? There's no way for us to push something down and just have it disappear and everything's great, right? It's going to come back up sideways. It's going to come back out through our projections. It's going to come back out through the way that we treat ourselves, through the way that we feel about ourselves, through our relationships with others. And so, yeah, how the shadow forms, it can happen in so many ways. Oftentimes, like I mentioned, through childhood, right? Through how we are, how we're formed, how we're programmed, the things that we learn as kids around what makes us feel loved and worthy and belonging and what doesn't, right? So let's say we're in school and we learn that, like, speaking up and being loud and expressive is that shuts us down. The teacher calls us bad or annoying, or our friends make fun of us, right? We learn that, okay, being myself isn't welcome. Or we might learn that, like, if I take too much candy, that I'm called greedy, or if I throw a tantrum, if I get angry and then I get punished, or your parents spank you, then we start to develop this story that anger and outbursts of expression are not safe for us to feel. So then we might move through life and repress our anger, suppress our true selves. We might judge anger in others. We might see other people get angry and that triggers us. So we can talk in a minute about how we might recognize the shadow.
Yes.
But yeah, so essentially it's our disowned parts that go into our unconscious or subconscious awareness, and kind of, as Jung would say, the personal unconscious, right? Like, we have the collective unconscious and then we have the personal unconscious. So this is like all the things that we don't consciously know about ourselves. When someone would ask you, who are you? What's your personality? Which is something that's invented anyways, right? It's all the parts of ourselves that we don't mention, right? Like, I might say to you, yeah, I'm this and that. I'm a traveler, I'm a creative, I'm a, multifaceted entrepreneur, multi-passionate. I'm a daughter and a friend, and I'm kind and compassionate and curious about life, right? Things that I probably wouldn't say to you are, sometimes I feel a little bit lost. Sometimes I feel a little bit lazy. Sometimes I have really bad boundaries, right? So these are all things that might be a little bit true for me sometimes, but they're not the things that I would. I mean, we don't usually want to, like, speak about the less positive aspects of ourselves, but there's certain things that we wouldn't want to recognize in ourselves to be true or to show to the world. And so that's what we put into the unconscious.
And all the shames and the fears and the blames that we're putting when you're in victim mentality, they're so part of the same shadow at the same time. I just wanted to add that
Mm,
what you say,
yeah,
because
yeah,
those are very limiting beliefs that comes with a lot of limiting beliefs, that guilt that you're carrying for
yeah,
ages,
definitely,
for
definitely.
mistakes that you did when you were 15.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're at your 50s and you're still carrying it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the shadow too.
Absolutely. Guilt, shame,
Yeah,
right? Like anywhere that we were out of integrity in our lives, anywhere that we felt that, yeah, that there was something that we did wrong, that we, right? Like, yeah,
yeah,
the guilt and the shame, these recurring, and then that leads to often it leads to recurring patterns in our lives, right? So I think this is an important part of recognizing the shadow is where do you see things happening in your life over and over that aren't serving you, that you often like feel like you're a victim of, or you make it about something happening outside, right? Like let's say you keep jumping from job to job. Let's say maybe you keep getting fired or you keep quitting or you keep finding jobs where you hate your boss and then you have to leave and then it's over and over. Or you do the same in relationships and you keep getting in relationship with the same kind of person over and over again. That was part of my work. I was engaging in relationships with emotionally abusive people for quite a few years, wondering like, what is this about? Are all the men out there just messed up, right? What is wrong with all of the men? This is a shadow. This is the part of ourselves. I had lived my life very much as this outward kind of happy-go-lucky adventurous person with a very positive persona, but I had not done the work of realizing that deep down I did not feel worthy of love, and I did not feel worthy of being treated respectfully by men.
yes.
And I attracted men who did not treat me respectfully. And that's the shadow, right?
Part of the shadow, the same thing that you're saying, it also has to do with money. If you feel
Mm,
that you deserve with money or being in an abundance life or whatever life of your dreams,
yeah.
it doesn't matter how many affirmations you do every day,
Yeah.
not gonna work. You have to do shadow work.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think a lot about this too, because it's just present in the collective field. I think this talk about money and kind of the conversation around, purpose and being able to do work that you love or having the freedom to pursue a path that actually feels aligned for you. But then people feel restricted because, the money fears and everything. And I've gone through that journey myself, and it rises up at times. And it's actually interesting we mentioned this because last night as I was going to bed or as I was in that like dream subconscious state just before sleeping, perhaps it was like in preparation for this conversation today, but I had the sentence come to my mind like abundance wants me. We're so used to saying like I want abundance or I want this. I want this. I'm going for this. What's your vision? Like my vision is I want this. What if we flipped it and we could just rest in this peaceful place saying that knowing that there, our world is abundance. There is nothing but abundance, actually, that we're living in an illusion of scarcity that's been created to keep us out of our power. And to recognize that abundance is magnetized to me. Abundance wants me. Abundance, all of the, and I don't just mean in money or physical resources, but just abundance of love, of care, of earth, of fresh water, of clean air, of delicious food, of the resources that I need to fuel my spirit so that I can give back because I am abundance, right? When I am well resourced, when you are well resourced, we are channels for abundant life force energy to move through us, to do good, to serve others, to uplift the planet, right? To help other souls to awaken and heal. And so I just felt that beautiful reframe of like, what if abundance just wants me? What if abundance wants us? What is that? Yeah. Maybe
So,
we're in a shadow when we're constantly wanting, when we're constantly focusing on that lack, what we don't have, you know.
hi everyone, this is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love. And if you have been feeling stuck where you are right now, or if you have felt that you cannot connect with others in the same language or the same emotions that you're feeling, if you're a coach, a healer, energy worker in any of those branches, maybe this is for you because we have felt the disconnection for the rest of our family, friends, that we cannot connect to them. And we're so afraid to actually go deep dive when we're getting triggered by our own clients because we're seeing our mirror image with them. My name is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love, and that's my spiritual name. And I take clients from feeling confused and feeling stuck to feeling free, to feeling that they feel empowered from themselves. I created a system, Path to the Heart, that goes in 3 levels. And the first level, it is healing the inner child, healing the parts of us that we've been so afraid, or it's very painful to do it. I have done it myself, not only with me, and I have done it with many, many of my clients, that I take them to this process. The second level, it is to go more into inner self, clearing the family lineage, to breaking the contracts and vows, learning deeper more about the laws of the universe. And the third level, it is learning how to channel, how to do waking up your and getting online your gifts, your unique gifts that the world so much needs right now. So, if you wanted to know more about this, I am eager to show you and to teach you all what I know that I use every day in my life. So, thank you for being here in this page. I really appreciate it. And this is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love. And reading your biography, obviously you have you're a somatic based coach. You're also a shaman. You're
Oh,
also
I'm not a shaman, that's for sure. But I'm a practice I practice some healing modalities, but I'm very clear on that. I do not call myself a
okay.
shaman.
Well, so how do you work with people in the shadow work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Which is interesting. And I just noticed a thing come up that like as an example of shadow, right? Because and then I'll answer your next question. But um I find that anything that we, well, this was kind of getting into it, right? How do we work with shadow? First thing is to notice our emotional reactions, right? To notice where do we become activated when we move through life? Where do we feel that, where do we feel good? Where do we feel aligned and excited? But also, where do we feel resistance? Where do we feel triggered? Where do we feel like, oh, right? So, one of those things just came up right now when even just that little mention of like you're a somatic practitioner, a shaman, I was like, no, because there's a part of me, like, first of all, I honor that term and I believe that that's meant for, indigenous practitioners who are born into that work, right? I've spent quite a lot of time in Peru and other medicine oriented communities where there are a lot of gringos and white people who anoint themselves with the title of shaman, right? And that bothers me. Like that triggers me. That's like, ugh, right? Um, but perhaps there's a shadow there, right? Like, or seeing people who I discovered this a lot for myself in the world of coaching and healing work as well. You see people kind of, yeah, anointing themselves with these grandiose titles, these fancy, words of just, you can tell that there's ego in it, right? And somehow that, like, I don't want that to bother me, but sometimes it does. It did bother me. It did bother me in the past more than it does now, right? It's another way that we can notice where our own shadow is, right? And that's like a vulnerable thing for me to share, right? Because I guess what I'm sharing is if I'm triggered by someone calling themselves like a goddess, priestess, shaman on the internet, is there a part of me that wants that? Like, I don't think so. But there's something there to look at, right? Like if, yeah, does that make sense?
Sense completely because I want to talk about a little bit about me. It's like I start painting when I was 6 years old. I started
Uh-huh.
singing when I was 13 years old. And when I opened my art gallery 25 years ago and exhibiting my artwork, and I start saying to everybody start asking me, "Are you an artist?" It's like, no, 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 I just paint.
Mm.
But for then I already had a collection of 100 paintings. It's like I just paint. It was my work. I was teaching already people how to paint, and it's like, but I am not an artist. I just dabble in it. And that's when I started shadow work, and it's like they we were basically programmed not to believe in ourselves or those names or
Mm.
not believing in ourselves. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
go into that transition to understand that I was an artist and there
Mm-hmm.
was nothing wrong saying yes, I am an artist and
Mm-hmm.
believing in myself, because more than I believe in myself, I can own that. And
Mhm.
then I can move on and become later on if I want something else. But I
Yeah.
was already mastered that part why I was gonna why I was hiding.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, it is. I come from a family that there's shamans and so forth, and I
Mm.
try to avoid that part, even if I work in that
Mm.
level, in many shapes
Mhm.
and forms. So
Mhm.
it is a resistance, and there is a lot of programming about
Mhm.
the witches or the shamans or the medicine
Mhm.
people or things like that, that it comes from religion. It's like,
Yeah.
oh no, you're bad if you're not this, but if you are minister or priest, it is
Yeah.
accepted.
Yeah.
They gave you the title. And in the shamanic work or
Yeah.
in the Wicca work, in a way, spirit is the one giving you the title, not a
Mhm.
human being giving you the title.
Mhm.
You're a psychologist because you received your diploma. A human give you that,
Mm.
not
Mhm.
spirit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Totally. Yeah.
well, that's
Exactly.
part of the shadow work, guys.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking.
There's so many routes to it, right? Like, yeah, it can be in these, like you said, taking on different roles in ourselves, like which roles make us feel, ooh, do I not feel like an artist, even though I have so much art done? Because the actual program is to not feel worthy, right? Like, no, I could never be that. We put others on a pedestal. You might notice yourself comparing yourself to others. Um, Obviously, areas that we feel like maybe jealousy or envy of other people, that's a shadow, right? We're seeing something in others that we are repressing the desire or the permission to want that for ourselves. And then, quite simply, like we'll see our shadow in the things that trigger us. If we, tend to come into certain dynamics with people that triggers us, that bothers us. You think of if there's even if it's someone in your life or someone, even like a public figure or someone in history that triggers you, that bothers you, someone that you could even say like, I hate them. This is one shadow work exercise, is actually to write down all the qualities of that person, and really choose the ones that you feel the most charged up about, that you feel like that's the worst quality a person could have, right? They're soulless, they're heartless, they're whatever, all these things. And then it's not to say that we are those things, but there's aspects in there to kind of melt and to understand more about, right? There's one practice that I like it's called, maybe you've heard of this one. It's the 3-2-1 practice. It's essentially like you think of someone in your life that you actually have an issue with, and we relate with them in three different ways. Um, like, for example, let's say it's someone at work, that's a boss at work that you can't stand, or you have a troublesome dynamic with them. You first relate with them from the third person, so thinking as, who are they? And then you write down all of the qualities that trigger you about them. And then you imagine yourself in conversation. So actually talking, imagine them in front of you, and you can ask certain questions like, why are you this way? Why do you treat me this way? What do you have to teach me? If there was a lesson that you had for me, what would it be? Right? So there's some different questions that we can ask. And then finally, envision yourself stepping into that person's body or their footsteps, and to take on those qualities yourself, and to just imagine. And the point of the work is it's uncomfortable. Shadow work is not easy. True shadow work is makes you squirm a little bit, because none of us want to come in and say, "Oh, like I'm unconscious, or I have anger issues, or I'm an asshole," or whatever. It's like, no, we have to see what is the part of us. Where was that quality repressed? Where did we make that quality not okay? Because there's always something that expression is wanting for us, right? The anger, the putting ourselves first. If someone's kind of a narcissist, well, it's like, what is the lesson in that? Like, where, if there was medicine in that quality for us, what would that be? Maybe it's having better boundaries. Maybe it's putting yourself first a little bit more, right? And so it doesn't mean like you need to take on the full negative negative expression of that quality, if we can call things positive and negative, but it's really like going into the inquiry to soften the charge of resistance that you have in yourself around these different parts, if that makes sense.
That is very, very interesting technique. No, I have not heard about it.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
it is a very, very interesting one because to understand every single part, we have to put the shoes of it, of some of the other person,
Mm-hmm.
why they feel like that about us.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's competition, maybe there is envy, maybe it's whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
but it is triggering you.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
the inner work. What is triggering them is their own work. It's not your issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's your work. It is what is
Mm-hmm.
triggering you. So yes, that was very, very interesting.
Yeah. And that practice, the 3-2-1, is by Ken Wilber, the founder of integral theory, just to like, give credit where credit is due. He's a super, super high level human. But yeah, like you said, it's, and when we're able to recognize those triggers, I mean, I just think that conscious awareness and mindfulness are such a key part of shadow work. So first of all, developing a daily meditation practice, noticing, just learning to watch your mind and to notice your own resistance, if there's resistance to being in stillness or to watching your breath, right? That can be just an initial little piece there. Like, where am I feeling resistance? Okay. And then when I go into life, can I bring that same mindfulness to the moments that I feel triggered? Because when you're mindful and you're aware of what's happening, it liberates you. When we're in the prison of our shadow, when our shadow is unintegrated, we're constantly bouncing through life reacting to different situations rather than being able to respond with compassion, right? Because this is ultimate freedom in life, right? Is to take everything that happens and to view it from a higher perspective, a higher level of consciousness, right? The lowest level of consciousness is to say, kind of this victim or blaming level where it's like the world is happening to me. Everything's happening to me, whether it's good or whether it's bad, it just happens to me, right? And then we rise in consciousness and we can see, okay, life is happening for me, and then life is happening through me, and then life is happening as me, right? So we start to see, and it blurs the line between self and other. We start to see truly life as a mirror, other people as a mirror, our earth as a mirror for ourselves, which is not a self-centered view. It's actually a very, in my opinion, very accurate view, to see that the qualities of the people that in our lives are often just mirrors of what we're currently working through as well, where we're currently at.
Kristen,
Yeah.
you have a program that you're going to be having very soon and an ongoing program. Can you please let us know a little bit about that? Because
Yeah, so I'm going to be launching a program in early 2025 called Design Your Destiny. So it's really about this that I just mentioned, which is, stepping into this empowered creator role in your life, raising out of this lower level of consciousness and learning the tools to work with your life you know, to become more in alignment with your path and your purpose, right? So these soul level tools to understand who you are, how to work with your energy, how to work with your heart, how to, bring everything in you together on a path that you're creating, right? How to have more conscious relationships and to heal the patterns that have been keeping you stuck. So we're going to do a lot of shadow work in there and a lot of other somatic tools, movement, breath, some shamanic work as well. And yeah, it's going to be a group journey. I'm such a fan of group work. Again, in groups, we can do our shadow work. We see each other, we mirror with one another. It's in one-on-one, we do that as a one-on-one relationship, right? Like my job as a coach is to be a mirror for you. But in the group, it's like we have this multi-dimensional kaleidoscope happening where we're all reflecting back different things for each other and we can learn from one another's journeys. So that's why I love holding group mentorship containers. And yeah, and I have a few retreats coming up for next year as well. But that Design Your Destiny program is what I'm really excited about creating for people in the first part of the year, really to start 2025 off in an empowered way, with lots of tools to support your vision for what you want to create, and really make the changes that you're ready to make.
so, guys, if you want more information, it is going to be down below this interview, this podcast. So don't miss it. So contact her, and she have programs, ongoing programs, and also she will have this
Mm.
program going on. So, Christian, I really, really appreciate this interview. It was very, very interesting. So in the future,
Good.
we need to repeat it. We need to
Yeah. Thank you so
something else.
much for the opportunity. This is great. I think yeah, this topic of shadow work is so important. I do want to recommend for people, there's a few books that are great. One of the top books that I read when I began my shadow work journey was Debbie Ford, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Really highly recommend. There's a lot of great practical exercises in there. Um and actually, there's another book called Existential Kink, which is kind of a different take on shadow work that I really enjoy as well. I forgot the name of the author of that one, but those are two of my favorite shadow work books that I come back to for just working through areas when I feel stuck and I know that it's time to go a little bit deeper. And the last thing is, the new moon time when we're in the dark moon. It's a great time to do shadow work. Astrologically, cosmically, we're supported in going into that dark inner space. And so, yeah, we do regular new moon women circles here where we do some shadow work. And, if there's ever a time that you're ready to really go in, like you can supercharge during that time.
Thank you so much. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
of course.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Monica.
Thank you, everybody. Please, if this video will help you, if this interview will help you, please share it with your friends because it may be one of your friends that is needing this to hear these words. And we really appreciate it. You give us a like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Don't forget to give us a comment. This is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love. Thank you for being in Soul Talk.